Welcome to episode 204 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live on November 6th, 2020. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a recent topic or news and how it relates to you. Today, Ben and Scott walk through the timeline of Microsoft's retirement plans for their legacy browsers, both the Legacy Edge and IE11. We also talk about some permission changes that may be coming to your OneDrive for Business tenant, and then wrap up by discussing how you can get your very own test or demo environment of Azure Arc running 100% in the cloud.
Did you pre-order your aluminum stainless steel iPhone this morning?
Oh no, did those come out this morning?
The minis and the maxes.
Oh, those are aluminium?
Well, stainless steel, glass, who knows? Do they have chamfered edges? I don't even know anymore. It's all too much for me.
So, I won't lie, the mini intrigues me. One, because I'm tired of paying more for my phone than I do for a laptop or for certain laptops. And two, because I don't know that the camera's the only thing that has me on the bubble. But other than that, if they keep coming out with these minis, I may give one a shot.
Yeah, you should do a long look, like go back and import a bunch of your photos, or like if you have something that can view all the EXIF data for them, see which ones came off the ultra wide and the telephoto, and you should be able to kind of figure that out and see which lenses you use the most, and you'll get a pretty good sense from there. And even see like which ones you took in like portrait versus non-portrait. So if you want like computational versus real, I think there's some super cool things like accessibility wise, especially on the quote unquote pro line this year, like the LiDAR on the on like the Pro Max combined with the lens. If you are somebody who is potentially like if you have a disability that affects your sight in some way, like that LiDAR being computationally aware, in some cases down to the inch is pretty cool. Like imagine being somebody who has to walk around and rely on their phone a little bit for visual guidance for like an augmented reality scenario, being able to just kind of like hold that up and wave it back and forth, and have everything come back to you, is pretty nifty. And that's something that's now possible on that hardware. And it's certainly been possible on other hardware, but arguably the iPhone is more consumer than buying a custom pair of smart glasses or something else.
Right.
So there's cool and nifty kind of things like that. I'm not in the market for a new phone, and I really like. I'm good with my big iPad and all those kinds of things. But the Pro Max with just being like absolutely massive this year at like, what is it? Like a 6.7, 6.8 inch display, like crammed in there.
That's like
that could be
iPad,
that.
Or iPad.
Yeah.
mini.
But now that we're all home for another year, at least as we continue to, go through pandemic times, do I really need like a phone that fits in my pocket this year? But
True.
I'm like you. I'm not too in the market for a new phone. If I was, I would actually think about, being that I'm pretty much iOS only across the board. I'd want to probably take a look at like a Pixel or something like that, just to have an extra device on the side.
Yep. I'm the same way. Like, I have absolutely no desire to get a new phone. I'm just going to stick with what I have. Who knows? Maybe some of that stuff, as they figure out how to get it smaller, will come into the mini. Although I doubt it. I think they're running into some constraints, which is maybe why the Pro Max is getting so large, is frankly, they're starting to have to do that to get everything in it that they want.
Yeah. Fun
Who
times.
knows?
I'm waiting for the notches to go away on iOS devices. Then I'll be in.
I'm waiting for fingerprint ID to come back.
Just keep on waiting.
Maybe next year, because I saw some stuff that it might come back, like behind the glass fingerprint.
Yeah.
Although, like we said, I kind of like the one on the power button on the side, like they did with the Duo.
Yes. Yeah, I mean that's on some devices, like it's on the iPad Airs, but apparently Apple's implementation is a little wonky there.
Yep. Anyway, should we move on from Apple into cloud?
We can.
Or politics?
I mean, this is your show, so
this is my show.
Yes.
So I thought about that. I was like, this is my show. I'm going to come on and talk about politics. No, I'm not going to talk about politics. I do not need any more politics in my life right now.
I would just say that
the elections, and I am burned out.
Yep. Yeah, it's like, so it is Friday after the elections. I just have to say this has been the longest Tuesday of like any week that I've had to go through yet this year.
I mean,
and it's
right.
And it's not Florida, so like, at least we're not being overly controversial this year.
Yes, I mean it's 2020, so why would you not expect the longest Tuesday ever to be in the longest year ever?
Yeah.
You know what? I saw this one. Okay, I'm gonna have to read this because this made me laugh. Tell me if you've seen this one, Scott. My family sent it to me, and regardless of your religious beliefs, this is God speaking. Did you finish arranging future events for the 2020s? The angel intern says, yes. Wait, did you say 2020s plural, as in the whole decade? And then God responds, yes. What did you think I said? The angel intern responds, 2020 the year? And God says, you put 10 years worth of history into 1 year. And the intern responds, kinda, yeah.
Yeah. It's a thing.
That sums up my 2020s right there. Anyways, okay, now on to the cloud news. Now that we got religion and politics all in the same podcast episode.
Yeah, you've gone and done it.
I am in trouble now. Okay, let's move on to cloud news. So, one tidbit that we talked about this before, and just as a friendly reminder, November 11, and I lost my timeline now, is when the first of the Microsoft web applications stops supporting IE 11. So Microsoft Teams come November, is it November 11? I'm pulling up my timeline now. I found it. November 30. I'm getting my numbers confused.
It's the end of the month.
Yes. So this was announced back in August. November 30, 2020, Microsoft Teams stops supporting Internet Explorer 11. And then the timeline from there will continue over the course of the next year to stop Microsoft 365 support across IE11 all the way through August of 2021. But yeah, already a month from now. If you're using Teams, if people are using it in their browser and you're on IE11, this is going to come up quickly.
Yes. Well, I think the other thing to keep in mind there is it's not just IE11, but there's also a bunch of things that are going to affect Edge Legacy as well. So not the new Chromium-based Credge version of Edge, but Edge Traditional is end of life pretty soon here. That's coming up in March 2021.
Yep, indeed. So use a non-Microsoft browser or flip over to Credge. I've been using Credge now for a while. I don't have any complaints. It's been a solid browser for me.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know about you. You can disagree.
Well,
you're allowed to disagree with me.
It's good to know I'm allowed to disagree on your show. No, Credge is fine. It's been a little bit weird and kind of hacky to wait for folks to get potentially, and maybe if they ever do, things like extensions moved over. The syncing has come a long way. So being able to like sign in with an account and sync across multiple devices for things like your bookmarks, your history, your your open pages, all those kinds of things.
Yep. Do your open tabs sync yet? My open tabs don't sync for me. Is that a me issue, or is that a...
No, that's just, like I said, some things are...
we still need to be patient issue.
Still potentially broken. So like history and open tabs are the two that are typically in the coming soon bucket for at least the non-canary and non-dev versions. But all the other stuff, favorites, settings, addresses, passwords, collections, that's been a handy one. Things like that all do come across. But occasionally, like I still notice like sync just breaks for a while. Like it's not like my account is signed out, but I just can't bring, that information's just not coming across for some reason.
Got it.
But yeah, it's been fine and okay. I think one of the things that I was hoping for that was really prevalent in the beginning when it was like a fresh install and you don't have all your extensions and everything's loaded into it is it's really nice and fast and lean. And then you run it for a couple months and you get it kind of loaded up and bogged down, just like you had, Chrome running, or you found your equivalent extensions from Firefox and brought those over, and it's just another set of web applications.
Which, I mean, kind of goes to show that the browsers are all... I think browsers are all fairly similar in terms of speed. It has more to do with extensions than it does
when they all run the same exact rendering engine. Yes, they would all be similar in terms of speed.
But yeah, those extensions are what kill you. I will say I love my horizontal tabs, my vertical tabs, not my horizontal tabs. My vertical tabs down the left side. Yep.
Those are coming as well. They should be. I thought I saw a thing the other day that they're coming out of dev soonish.
I'm on Canary, so I don't even know what's...
Or maybe Canary. It was one of the more upstream builds. So
we have Canary,
so it's not... It's Canary, Dev, and
Beta.
Public. Yeah.
No, I think
is there
Canary,
a beta
Dev,
one?
Beta, GA, or Public. Yeah, I think there's 4.
Gotcha. Well, anywho, if you haven't taken a look at Credge yet, and you're particularly in an enterprise organization that has you deploy Windows, right? You have Edge on your desktops. You probably want to start figuring out what that looks like. Microsoft has tons of guidance out there, arguably very good guidance about how to make the transition from Edge legacy over to Credge. So I'll include a link to the latest planning and deployment guidance for Credge or Microsoft Edge that runs on Chromium in the show notes, and take a look at it, because like I said, that end of life timeline for March 9th is coming sooner rather than later.
Yes, definitely. So you know what else is coming sooner rather than later?
What's that? My teeth falling out because I ate all my kids' Halloween candy on Tuesday.
Yes, absolutely. That is definitely coming sooner rather than later. My kids won't let me eat their Halloween candy. I have to sneak it at night. And then I have certain kids that would actually notice. But it is not your teeth falling out, although that may be true also. It is this everyone except external users, internal SharePoint group that it's existed for a long time now.
Oh, yeah, the EEEU. Everybody knows that one.
Like, I don't know that I've ever heard it referred to as the EEEU before this announcement. But that was one of those security groups that was in your OneDrive for Business accounts, and it's been there for a long while. So there is now an update rolling out to remove EEEU from pre-August 2019 accounts in Office 365. So apparently, sometime in August of 2019, and we may have seen this and talked about it, and I just forgot, they got rid of that altogether for new accounts, but all these old accounts still had it in there. And now they have finally said, you know what, enough is enough. So back on October 26th, they said this is going to be removed on, where's the date? I had the date for a minute. It's going to start rolling out early November and will continue through the end of 2020. So not a big deal, right? They go in and remove this. Unless you're actually using everyone for external users, you may not really care about this. However, the one that kind of raised a red flag for me in here and has raised a red flag for a few other people is that at the time of removal, they are actually going to go through and remove the everyone except external user policy as default and perform a full permissions reset for personal lists within these OneDrive for Business accounts. As a result, a user that has these personal lists created in their OneDrive for Business account will lose any previous sharing and security settings they had on these lists, and other users within the organization will be unable to view these lists until the owner reinstates said permissions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it explicitly mentions lists. So I don't think this is actually going to affect the default document library. However, one point you brought up is that users, especially users that have these older accounts, where you used to be able to create alternate document libraries in your OneDrive, it doesn't really say whether it'll affect those other document libraries in OneDrive for Business. And what this would affect is any lists that people with older accounts have created via Microsoft Lists and chose to create these as personal lists. Those are lists now in OneDrive for Business. If you created those and then shared those out to users, it appears even from the message in the message center that these lists will also be affected.
Yes. I think that's the bigger thing there, is that it's a full permission reset, and it's not clear. Does it affect just lists? Is it both lists and libraries, as long as they are not the default library in your OneDrive for Business, and what does that look like? And I think the other thing that's been called out by a lot of people that have seen this is there's no great way to find out what the impact of that change is within your organization. Like, there's no script that's provided or anything like that to go and scrape the permissions and see what's going on there. So you'll potentially be kind of out in the wilderness trying to figure that out yourself. You could maybe go and say, like, oh, my tenant's been up since April 2017. So I certainly have these types of users out there. Let me go find every user who was created in my tenant before 2019, when this change was instantiated, and we'll go fix that up and see what it has to be. But I that's a tall order and a tough thing to do, especially on a tight timeline.
Yeah, and it does sound like, based on this Message Center article, that if users are aware of this and want to kind of self-mediate this themselves, or if you as an admin want to go in and grant yourself permissions to everybody's OneDrive sites and check, if you go in before this starts rolling out on November... Oh, they started it already. It started on November 1, Scott. They gave people 5 days notice before they started it.
It did, but with the way it rings out, like, you'll be lucky if it hits you before December. Let's be honest.
But if you do get to it before December and you want to go in and automatically remove this permission level yourself on your lists shouldn't be affected the way I'm reading this message in the message center. So you could go in, find the lists, modify the permissions, delete this EEEU group from those list permissions, and then all your existing sharing permissions will be left alone when this hits your tenant.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another removal. And then there was an update, Scott.
The only constant is change.
The only constant is change. And sometimes it's even a change in the announcement. It's announced one way and then reversed.
Not sure.
Reversed, better clarified. How's that? It was announced and then they realized the error in how they phrased it and what people thought they were doing and had to go in and better clarify the feature that was coming.
Yeah. I mean, clarity.
And which feature was this, Scott? Because you sent it to me. I didn't see the announcement until you sent it to me.
Yeah,
I got all excited.
You should never get excited when I send you something. It's usually going to be something depressing. So this is support for multiple account sign-in in Microsoft Teams. And when I say support for multiple account sign-in in Microsoft Teams, specifically on desktop, what do you think that means?
I immediately think...
You describe what you think that feature should be or you would want it to be so that it actually works for the majority of folks
of the people asking for it. So my immediate thought was, I don't have to run 5 instances of profiles within Credge or Chrome or whatever any day, because now all of my organizational accounts can be signed into my desktop tenant just like I have on my mobile device. And life is going to be so much better because I can just keep a single client running, a single Teams client running on my desktop, and access all of my accounts, all of my Office 365 accounts, all of the guest tenants those accounts have access to. And I am going to be a very happy man.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
I mean, there's a lot of consultants out there that have been asking for this, like pretty much ever since the day Teams rolled out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it might even be able to work like it does on mobile, and it could very well be one of the most requested features in user voice for Microsoft Teams.
So are you going to break my heart?
I am, because if you thought that was the way it was going to work, then Eve, little faith, let me get you a cookie.
I might need more than a cookie if that's not what this is.
No,
I might need a hug.
It's like warm hugs in the Matrix when the Oracle gives you a cookie. Like by the time you're done eating it, it'll all be over. So what this change is, in fact, it's an announcement that Teams will on the desktop will now support one organizational ID and one Microsoft account signed in at the same time. So you will be able to flip back and forth through your personal and work identity within the same Teams client.
That's assuming I'm using Teams with a personal identity for anything.
For anything. Well, I think you signed into it once to try it.
Yeah, I think I did. And then I was like, I don't know why I'd use this. And who knows? There's probably people sending me, oh, no, wait, there's nobody in that personal Teams. I don't think. Maybe there is. Yeah. Maybe I have a whole bunch of messages. Maybe I should be using it. No, that's kind of sad. Because frankly, I don't know anybody that's using Teams with a personal account, if I'm being honest. Do you?
No.
Oh. Well, I'm glad that one person is getting this feature.
Yeah. I heard it's going to make Spence really happy. So
Spence, is he the one person doing this? Spence is doing this?
He might be the one. There are certainly some of us out there who maybe have you might have had an organization, like if you still have easy IDs kicking around for some reason, where your alias for your work account and your personal account are the same thing, then you might have had to organizationally go out and had somebody actually add a separate personal account to get you in. But I think since, especially over the last few years, as B2B has gotten so solid, that we're all sitting out there like org to org and just kind of waiting to go.
You know what?
Let's see it.
I dare you to tell Andrew Connell that B2B has gotten solid.
For the case of me being able to invite you to my tenant and you being able to invite me to yours, that is a pretty solid experience. It sucks to have to leave a tenant.
Yes.
There's all sorts of things going on with actually logging in and logging out and going back and forth between tenants. But if AC is having trouble with identity, we should just get Paul Schaefline in and he'll tell him identity is easy and it's not a problem.
Absolutely. That would solve all of our problems.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think B2B has gotten better too. I have not had any issues, knock on wood, with B2B in the last, it's been a while since I can remember having like a legitimate issue with B2B that wasn't on me or something I had done very badly. And even that, I don't remember one of those. When it first came out, I had some struggles. But yeah, I would agree with you that I think it's gotten a lot more solid.
Yep. And specifically B2B, like B2C as a PaaS service is still changing all the time. You know, you've got to adopt new features as they come out. Like, you know, hey, the latest new authorization flow comes out. You've got to change your app so it adopts that thing. Like, yeah, that is all very rough. But adding one user from a Microsoft 365 or from an Azure Active Directory tenant, a B2B tenant to another tenant, like that's a pretty easy thing to do. Now, managing those users once you're in your tenant and all the other stuff that comes with that is a royal pain in the behind.
Yes.
But adding users, totally easy.
Adding users is great. But I've had that thought. I'm like, I should go clean up a bunch of these external users in my tenant that I shared stuff with, and I don't really need them around anymore. And it's like, I'm just going to leave them. It's too much work to try to clean that up.
Yeah. As long as they're not consuming licenses, like, do you really care?
Right. Well, so for me, it's more just it muddies up my admin center and my users because I can view like licensed users or I can view all my guest users, but I haven't found a way, unless I'm missing it, and if I am, please somebody tell me, to view all of my non-guest users when I look at my users in Microsoft 365. Like, just show me my internal user accounts and filter out all the guests. I can see all the guests, but I haven't found a way to do like a opposite of that and show just my internal users.
Sounds
and
like
maybe
you
I'm
need to
just
spend
stupid.
more time in Azure AD and less in the Office
and
365
that would probably
portal.
be my solution is I just go into Azure AD. But yeah, like I can go do filters and I can do guest users and I can see guest users, but I want to do like a not guest users. Yeah. And it's not there. I have users with errors, user admins, unlicensed users, sign in block, sign in allowed, service support, sales support, partner agents, licensed, help desk, guest, global, billing, and all. I want like unlicensed internal users or something like that. And it just doesn't exist in the Microsoft 365.
I mean, the simple answer is PowerShell. Come on.
Active user. It would be.
Yeah. There's a REST API for that. Just go to the graph.
Yeah. And doing anything with graph and all of that is easy with authentication to it, like Paul Schaefline has said.
Absolutely.
Oh, that is the joke that is never going to die.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So we've got a few more minutes left. You had an interesting Azure announcement. We've talked about Microsoft 365 for a while, specifically around Azure Arc and people that may want to test this out, try it, play with it. There was a GitHub. Well, it's actually in Microsoft's. I didn't even realize what it was in. Microsoft published this to their own GitHub about some ways you can do this with Azure VMs.
Yeah. So if you go to in the Microsoft Oregon GitHub, so github.com/Microsoft/Azure_Arc, you would end up in the official Arc repo, which is all of the demo guides for Arc. So if you're looking to kind of bootstrap and get started with Arc, that is the place to go and see some of that information. So you've heard about like, oh, Arc works with Kubernetes. Well, how do I make that work? Maybe from my Kubernetes instance that's running on prem, or you want to play with it from like Minikube or something like that. All easy, all ready to go. And they've had demo guides out there for how to onboard on-premises virtual machines over to an Arc, so you can run through that experience, see like, hey, what does it actually mean to onboard a virtual machine or onboard a server to Arc? And how does that potentially change the way that I use Azure when I can start to see on-premises machines in my cloud environment? One of the things that's been difficult there and not very clearly documented is, how do you actually do that? How do you go through that demonstration experience if you do not have an on-premises server to onboard? Like, not all of us have big beefy computers under our desks with all the extra RAM and CPU that we need. And quite frankly, if you live in like Azure or AWS land, whatever it happens to be, you tend to use those environments as your demo environments as well. Like if I need a machine, I just go to Azure and next, or use some PowerShell or an ARM template and create myself a virtual machine. Yep. Well, one of the things that happens there is you can't onboard an Azure virtual machine into Azure Arc because it's already in Azure, right? It's already onboarded, and Azure already knows about it, and it's registered with the compute resource provider, and it's just kind of there and available. So one of the things that they added to this repo, this is all a very long-winded way to say that they've added guides to onboard Azure Linux and Windows virtual machines with Azure Arc 100%, for demonstration purposes only. This is not a supported scenario in the slightest way to make this happen. But effectively what they've done is they've provided a series of ARM templates and scripts to spin up these VMs. They will help you go ahead and shut down and override the IMDS, which is the Azure Instance Metadata Service. And by overriding that service that talks into Azure, you can then talk to the kind of IMDS that's not faked out, but like the representation of that comes through having an Arc enabled server, which is pretty cool. You can just kind of go out and at least demonstrate, or not even demonstrate this. Like, I think it's helpful for folks to understand the onboarding experience. Like, even if you're not going to demo it for somebody else, like just go ahead and run this thing and demo it for yourselves to see how these servers and connected machines manifest themselves within things like resource groups.
Right, because I can imagine for, like you said, not just demo, but if you're trying to do training and you want this to be part of a lab for your training, or any one of those where, like you said, I haven't had an on-prem machine other than the laptop I do my work off of daily in a long time. So to be able to demo all of this and train on all of this and see how it all works in Azure is really kind of nifty.
Yeah. So it's like, it's very straightforward, right? Deploy this ARM template. When you log into the VM, this script will run, or go run the script and disable, like in the case of like a Windows VM, you're going to disable the Windows Azure guest extension and, override again all those calls to IMDS.
Right. I mean, looking through this, it's a super straightforward process to get this set up. But yes, I can't see how this is completely unsupported for anything other than that, because, I mean, let's be fair. If you have a machine running in Azure and you start disabling that Windows Azure guest agent on your VMs running in Azure, I can imagine that there is some potential for some bad things to happen or things to just not work like you might expect?
Yes, absolutely. Truer things have never been said.
Yes, I said something true during election time frame. So does that mean my political lie meter just swung all the way to truth?
Yeah, sure.
Here I go, still tying politics into our podcast.
Yeah, well, let's go with that. So, real quick, one more virtual machine thing. I don't think we've talked about this one either, but it's been out there for a couple weeks now. If you do any type of data science, or you've been looking to get hands-on, maybe with something like Azure Data Lake, ADLS Gen 2, and Databricks clusters. So getting hands-on with Databricks or Spark or things like that. There is a new single node Databricks cluster that you can run. So if you go and deploy Databricks, you can now deploy in a cluster mode of single node, which gives you 0 workers, but it does give you whatever, your one kind of master or driver server is within there. And the cool thing about single node clusters is they support all the Spark APIs. They're awesome for just iterating over smaller data sets. You also get access to all the libraries that come with Spark and Databricks as they come together. And even though it's single node, effectively that driver is also just used as the executor, and kind of leveraging available cores within the cluster, which is kind of fun. So it allows you again to kind of go through that demonstration motion, potentially get onboarded or hands-on with those a little bit sooner. Or if you just don't need all the oomph and compute that comes from a full end server Databricks cluster, this is a pretty good way to get hands-on with that.
Got it. So this is one that would be supported for production if you just want a single node. This is not just like a demo only or trial only. You could do this in a full-blown production environment if you just don't need the horsepower.
It is a supported deployment mode. So it is a way to, I would view it primarily as getting hands-on a little bit easier with some of these things. So it's not like you're deploying the data science VM or something like that, like the demonstration VMs. Like you are actually deploying a Databricks cluster. It just happens to be a single node cluster. So you don't have any of that resiliency built in. You don't have any scale out in scheduled jobs or things like that get submitted. Job pooling and things like that all kind of go away. But if you don't need all those things and you're good without the resiliency and a single node is going to be able to do it for you, that might be something to go ahead and take a look at.
Very cool. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thanks for those 2 interesting Azure tidbits to wrap up the show. And with that, I've got a few minutes. I have a meeting. Oh, my day. It's amazing I actually get any work done because I just sit in meetings all day lately.
Yes.
Although it wasn't all meetings this week.
Welcome
I was
to the
doing
times.
some training this week, so. Training this week, training next week, and then maybe I can actually get some work done or some tasks knocked off my task list.
You just keep telling yourself that, and we'll go.
I do. Makes me feel better. But for now, go enjoy your rainy. Is this supposed to be rainy all weekend? Your rainy Friday.
I have no idea anymore.
I don't either. So enjoy your day, and we will talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
Yep. Thanks, Scott.